Hi, I'm Vic Syracuse. Some of you know me probably from base leg aviation. We actually made it to Oshkosh with our Hummingbird, the beater. Carol and I flew it up. It was about 11 hours from Atlanta over 2 days. Yes, we were faster than the cars. We had a friend drive up, took him 16 hours, and we took 11. So it was a lot of fun, and it's amazing we're here, quite candidly. It was a fun project. Took a little over a year to build, about 1,800 hours. And test flying was fun. No task-based program for me in the helicopter, so a full 40-hour test program. And I think a test flew at March of this year was the first time. And we're a little over 80 hours, and we're up here at Oshkosh. Well, you know, quite candidly, I've built 11 other aircraft, and we were kind of looking to do something. At least I was. I don't know so much about Carol. And we started talking about it, and I said, well, maybe I'd like to do a helicopter. And Carol said, don't you think you ought to learn to fly one first? So that was probably a good idea, and I did that. I had some Robinson time and then in a Schweitzer 269, and I stayed proficient while I was building this, which is the right thing to do. I'm always lecturing other builders. Don't let those flying skills deteriorate. So about 6 weeks before I flew this one, I sold the Schweitzer and went and got some refresher training in this, and you know, against my better judgment, I did make the first flight and all went well. My understanding is there's about 360 have been sold, and there's about 250 or so that are flying worldwide. So, and that was one of the driving factors. And you know, this is experimental aviation, and there was a time when I was younger and invincible. At this stage of life, it's more important. I tend to look at the safety records on aircraft that we look at. And the interesting thing to me was this aircraft, which was, it's basically a certified Sikorsky in a kit, and there's never been a fatal accident. And so that was like, wow, that was good. And sure enough, as we're building it, all the pieces coming out of the box had yellow tags, PMA, FAA stickers on them. So there's a real degree of confidence in this helicopter. So, you know, we've been asked about what it was like to build a helicopter that, one, is complex enough to begin with, especially a big, large four-seat helicopter with an IO-540 in it, large rotor system. And having built 11 other aircraft against various kit manufacturers, it was interesting in that this is basically a certified helicopter in a kit, as I mentioned. And sure enough, we got a manual about this thick. It was all step by step. But more importantly, we got a stack of drawings about this tall. And most of them are some of the original drawings from Sikorsky. And so it was really neat having the actual blueprints. And you know, again, it's a complex machine. And but it's like any of the other ones, if you just pay attention, step by step, eventually it gets done. This is not one of those ones where you want to jump around and do this and do that, because as an example, the fuel bladder sits right here underneath the rear seat. And so you don't want to put that in while you're still mounting things to the firewall. You want that to be one of the last things that you put in the aircraft. And there's other things like it. You've got to really be thinking ahead quite a bit. So, you know, we talk about building this thing. There are some of the kits over the years, they come out of the box and you go, and some of them I've remade myself. In this case, as I said, a lot of the parts had yellow tags on them, which was really interesting to me. The entire drivetrain, as an example, there's, you know, the main transmission, a coupling, there's a tail rotor shaft, there's 2 more transmissions in the tail, and they're all yellow tag certified kind of stuff. So a lot of confidence, and the parts were just really, really well made. The landing gear, all the castings, they actually still had the FAA part numbers on them or Sikorsky part numbers. So I know we've also had a lot of questions about, hey, what is it like, the big wrapper around it? So here's the things that really drew me to it. As I mentioned, I was flying a Schweitzer 269. That's a 3-rotor system, fully articulated, a little bit different than the Robinson that I initially started training in. What I liked about that is, one, it's smoother, just kind of like my 3-blade MT on the RV-10. And sure enough, when I went to fly this one, you know, one of the emergencies you always practice for in helicopters is an engine failure or something that causes you to enter an auto rotation. Auto rotations can be quite dramatic in some helicopters. As an example, the Schweitzer, we used to joke to look just above your toes. That's where you're going to land from 1,000 feet, okay? This one it's got a large desk. It's over 30 feet in diameter, and the auto rotations are almost next to nothing. If you're at 50 knots, you just kind of continue at 50 knots down. It gets about 350, 500 feet a minute, so it's very, very gentle. I like that. It's a nice cushioned impact if you do have to set it down. This one has an IO-540 engine in it. It's a Lycoming Thunderbolt. I like the Thunderbolt engines. I have one in my RV-10. Many of you know we've flown it to Alaska a number of times. I find them very reliable. Again, back to this stage of life, I'm looking to get rid of as much risk as I can. It's got a lot of pedal authority, which I found very, very amazing. And this nice long tail boom. One of the things that bugged me in the Schweitzer, of course it's a training helicopter, but in turbulence it's constantly doing this. With this nice long tail boom here, it's fairly straight in the turbulence. You got a much better factor. And I've flight tested it now in winds over 25 knots and done complete 360s, and I have not lost any tail rotor authority. Yeah, so the other exciting thing about this in the Schweitzer, whenever, I mean, reality is we don't use a helicopter for many cross countries. Oshkosh was the big one, and it was pretty exciting to do that. But most of the time, the reality is we're going on short trips. Carol likes to go to dinner in it or lunch. We got a nice airport a little while away, about 25-minute helicopter ride's really nice. But it was always, hey, here, put this on your lap and carry this. So we started looking around for something that actually had a real cabin to it. And this one just excels in all, you know, just everything. It's kind of like the RV-10. We have an RV-10. It's got nice 4 seats. We actually have the same engine, the IO-540 Thunderbolt. And the specs are about the same. We've got about a 1,000-pound useful load here. And I flight tested it to 2,860 pounds during the flight test program. And we still had 950 feet a minute rate of climb on it. It really performs nicely. On the way up here, we had Caroline in the front, full fuel, and we had 160 pounds of stuff in the back. When you're coming to Oshkosh, you tend to bulk out before you'll gross out. But we were right there at gross weight, and it just performed really nicely all the way here. I'm very, very lucky. Most of the helicopters you see that are experimental, unless you get somebody to do an interior for you, they're a little sparse. Carol managed to get her sewing machine back running, and we've got a really nice leather, all really nice interior. So we've got a nice comfort factor in this one as well. So the other question we've been getting, kind of somewhat amazing, you flew it? A lot of the other helicopters here, they're trailered in, or maybe some fly it to up to 5 miles to Oshkosh and then fly it in. We flew it here. All right, so where are we? We're right here at the Lycoming booth with the Lycoming Thunderbolt engine. Actually, the other side, we have the cowling off so you can see it. But for any of you who are really interested or just want to see it, stop by and see us. I'd love to meet you. We get a lot of letters from you during the course of the year, and I'd love to put faces with names. So we look forward to meeting you.